True. Nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous. I had been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in the heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How? Then? I am mad? Hearken, and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object there was none. Passion there was none. I loved the old man. I was hired to help him in his old age, and he had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. By now, you fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing, but you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. Every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh so gently. Then I turned on my lantern. A single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye, and this I did for 7 long nights, every night just at midnight, but I found the eye always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work, for it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. And perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly, as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back, but no, his room was as black as pitch with a thick darkness. Perhaps he heard the door creak. Suddenly, the old man sprang up in bed. I kept quiet still and said nothing. For a whole hour I did not move a muscle. He was still sitting up in the bed listening, just as I had done, night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall. I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He had been saying to himself, "It is nothing but the wind in the chimney. It is only a mouse crossing the floor." Or, "It is merely a cricket which has made a single chirp." Yes, he had been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he had found all in vain. When I had waited a long time, very patiently, I opened the lantern so stealthily, until a simple dim ray, like the thread of the spider, shot from out the crevice and fell upon the vulture eye. It was open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. Now, there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury, as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into courage. It grew quicker and quicker, and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. old man's hour had come. I then smiled gaily to find the deed so far done, but for many minutes the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me, not be heard through the wall. At length it ceased. The old man was dead. If still you think me mad, you will think so no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposited the body between the scantlings. I then replaced the board so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. It was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. There came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I now to fear? There entered one man who introduced himself with perfect suavity as an officer of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police office, and he had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled, for what had I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was in my own dream. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. I took my visitor all over the house. I bade him search well, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim. I showed him his treasures, secure, undisturbed. The officer was satisfied. My manner had convinced him. I felt myself getting pale and wished him gone. My head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ears, but still he sat and still chatted. The ringing became more distinct. It continued and became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gained definiteness, until at length I found that the noise was not within my ears. No doubt I now grew very pale. I talked more fluently, with a heightened voice. Yet the officer heard it not. I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, as if excited to fury by the observations of the officer, but the noise steadily increased. Oh God, what could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore. It grew louder, louder, and louder. Almighty God, no, he heard, he suspected, he knew. He was making a mockery of my horror. I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. Dissemble no more. I admit the deed. Tear up the planks. Here. It is the beating of his hideous heart.